Kia ora everyone, Ben O'Keefe here. This is the final whistle.
Hello and welcome back to Rugby Connection presents The Final Whistle. Now, for the first time in the pod's history, our next guest is responsible for blowing that final whistle. He's been a referee in the Rugby Championship, Super Rugby, Six Nations and a World Cup. Also Alliance Tour most recently. It's Ben O'Keefe. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. How are you getting on?
Yeah, thanks, Murray, and kia ora everyone. Mate, I'm really good. I'm excited about this. I didn't realise I was the first referee to be on the show, so a little bit of pressure on me. Got to set a high standard for the rest of the boys and girls that you hopefully get on later.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, you are making history, so happy days.
Nice.
First question, we always ask our guests this, but we're going to do it in a two-parter this time because, like I said, you're the first ref. So what actually got you into rugby, and then how did you actually get into refereeing?
I think that the first part of that question is quite easy. You can see the jerseys that you've got on in the background. So I'm from New Zealand. Rugby is a bit of, what we grow up with over here, a bit like football over in parts of England. You come to New Zealand, if anyone's been there, kids, we grew up, running, throwing a rugby ball around. So that was definitely me growing up. That's how I fell into in love with the game really early. So that was quite easy. It did help that my dad refereed when I was younger as well. But I played football and I played rugby when I was at a younger age, and I just loved the game. I wanted to be an All Black. I wanted to wear one of those jerseys that you've got on the wall, but it wasn't to be. And then I sort of got a little bit of a shunt from the old man when I was about 18, 19, saying that look, you give it a shot refereeing because there's a bit of a pathway there now. There's a bit of a career there for you if you can go well. And for me, it was simply just something that I wanted to do to stay part of the game because I didn't want to play anymore. I sort of lost that love for it. So I picked up the whistle, started whistling a few games on the weekends. And yeah, it was something to keep up the energy, keep up the fitness, keep out of the work I was doing during the week. And I fell in love with that really, really, really quickly. So it allowed me to sort of continue my journey as a rugby fan within New Zealand. And mate, I still love the game. I still love rugby. I think it's the best sport in the world. So the fact that I get to be a part of it now, I'm really, really privileged and grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that you did it purely to keep up with fitness and try and almost find that love of the game again, in a way.
Yeah, and there's many different ways that referees get involved in refereeing. Like there is that one option now where it is a bit of a career pathway. So some people choose to actually referee versus actually playing. So that's really come in where maybe 10, 20 years ago that wasn't really an option. The big one is often players when they get injured or they can't get back to playing. They then with their one leg or their one shoulder they take up the whistle. So that's often another option. But yeah, I had a bit of it in my family with the old man, and that's sort of what got me through. So I don't know whether there was a little genetic thing there too. I grew up like playing, and when I watched him referee, I never watched him as a referee. I was never sort of taking notes of how he refereed the game. But certainly I'm sure that, just by diffusion or whatever it is, when I was on the sideline watching him and seeing what he was doing, I probably took a bit on board and used it in the early days for myself.
Fair enough. I mean, you could have also took your brother's genetics because your brother was an Olympian, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think if we talk about genetics in the family, I think him and my sister probably took all the sporting ones. They were pretty successful at school, and yeah, my brother. So he played football. He went over to the States. He got a scholarship over there to go to university. He was quite a successful footballer, so soccer in New Zealand, and was selected to go to the Olympics in London. So yeah, he's got this little Olympian thing on the wall back at home. So every time we all at home for Christmas, it's conveniently in a spot that I have to walk past all the time. So he likes to remind me about that. But yeah, certainly he did really, really well. And when we were growing up, when we were doing cross country, playing rugby in the backyard, it's moved to golf now. He was always beating me back then, and unfortunately, still beating me now. So so I think if you're not, sometimes also the fourth thing, if you're not a great sportsman, sometimes we start refereeing as well. So that's maybe the pathway I chose to.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, your brother went to the Olympics, but you've done the World Cup and the Lions Tour, so
yeah, I'm trying to catch up a little bit there, but No, I've been lucky where I've been able to actually call it. He was sort of doing it, non-professionally. I've been able to be a professional for about 6-7 years now, so it's been my day-to-day job. And for me, anything that I'm trying to do, I want to try and keep improving and keep achieving, and I'm trying to get better every year. So it's been quite good to be able to see that progression's led to sort of those pinnacle events and being able to challenge myself in those games, because the higher you get, the more experience you get. It doesn't get any easier, that's for sure. But yeah, really enjoyable.
Well, I've got a lot of fan questions, and I do mean a lot, so I've had to just kind of crunch some of them down. So we've got one from Ethan.Hindry. What is your favourite game to ref? What was your favourite game?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I had been asked that before, and I just find that it constantly changes depending on what mood I'm in, depending on what game I did last weekend. Because I really enjoy every game that I've done. Like, I've obviously just come from Argentina, and I'm sorry, but obviously being a Scotsman, refereed the last game there, and that was a really good tour. It was we went to some great places in the north of Argentina, and if we looked at the other series that were going on in July, there's a lot of stuff going on in the New Zealand Island series, the Aussie England series. But what I liked about the Scotland Argentina series is that yes, it went down to the wire. We had a try on full time in a 1-1 series in the third game. So really, you couldn't really split the teams, and I think every game was like that. So that was a pretty exciting game to be part of recently. But if I have to think of some of those games that I probably remember, when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, when I'm retired and I'm a rocking chair, it probably would be some of those ones where you mentioned. So definitely the Lions tour, and potentially memorable for many things that happen outside of the game. But I just remember that week leading into that game, we're under so much pressure around what happened in the first test, all the media attention that was happening because of the impact of some of the coaches' comments. The mountain of pressure just, it changed that landscape for that test match for the 80 minutes. And, I thought we went into the 80 minutes, and I had a pretty clear head, and we sort of delivered what we needed to do in a pretty, the most intense game that I think I've ever witnessed or been involved in. So that one, and then probably, I think, I refereed Japan versus Scotland at the last World Cup. So refereed again Scotland, but that game, a host nation had 80,000 people in that stand. The support was equal for Scotland and equal for Japan. Mm. And again, I thought that game really was played by the players, and I was almost able to just set some early guidelines and let the skills that both teams in terms of the players had just play out. So sort of those sort of games that molded around those pinnacle events, so World Cups and Lions series, certainly some big ones. But mate, I even refereed a club game in my region, Horowhenua Kapiti, which was Waikanae versus Shannon, a real small town that I went to a few weeks ago after doing a Super Rugby game. And mate, I love that. It was an amazing afternoon. It was club rugby. I had to get the long sprigs out because the field wasn't kind of like Murrayfield, where it's a bit like carpet. And it was a great game. And then we had a beer and some curried sausages afterwards with the speeches and the aftermatches. So, those sort of times is what I love about the game of rugby. And so yeah, to answer that question, it's hard. Like there are many games, because I just love it so much. I sort of can think of many off the top of my head. But certainly those ones were at the front.
No, that's good, and I like the fact that it's always changing. But just because you mentioned Scotland 3 times, I will just add a fourth. You did referee Scotland England, where Scotland won, so there we go.
Okay, yes, all right, well, you got one back. But again, even if I think of that, that again was an amazing game. Intense. That's what a test match is. A test match is called a test match because it's a test. For referees, and that certainly was. It tested me right to the 83rd minute where we had the fourth scrum reset, and I walked off that game feeling pretty proud that actually the team that deserved to win this game won the game, and it was due to what the players did. So thanks for bringing that up. It makes me feel a little bit better talking to you.
That's all good. I was actually at that game, so I think that's the game I referred to, the one I almost had a heart attack.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, and how good was that atmosphere? Like,
Crazy.
it's a special place, I reckon, Murrayfield. I love it, and certainly that atmosphere is, and especially when we've had like the last few years of no crowds. You know, really, I refereed games like that Lions series. I've refereed Super Rugby games where we had no crowds, and you really miss that, and you really need that as a referee because you actually use it to get yourself up for those types of games and keeps you focused for the 80 minutes. So, I was super focused in that game because the crowd was just ecstatic. It was great.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that actually. Was it easier to referee a game when there's no crowds? Because obviously, regardless of what way you give a penalty, there will be fans that aren't happy with it because it's against their team, and obviously you will get booed regardless of what side it is. So is it easier just to like blow the whistle, give a penalty, and there's no noise, or do you need the noise?
Mate, it's I've been able to referee a few games without crowds now, and it's really unnerving. It actually can make you trip up as a referee, I think, because everything from walking into the stadium, you start to hear the buzz, you start to hear the hum of other people in the crowd. Warming up, as you run out, the crowd, they start cheering when their favorite player runs out, so that buzz, that atmosphere starts building up, and it does increase your heart rate as a referee. It actually makes you focus. So then when you get into the game, because there's that atmosphere in that game, you've prepped really well, you fine-tuned what you're focusing on in your warm-up, you go out and you can referee the game. Now, honestly, in a game of rugby, as a referee, you make decisions in front of you, and you often don't actually notice the crowd. In those big games like Six Nations, it's not really until, for example, I refereed Wales versus England at Twickenham. So Twickenham is one of the biggest stadiums in the world. And you actually, when you're in the middle, you don't really notice the crowd that much because you're so focused on what's in front of you. You're so focused on trying to make the decision. So you give a penalty one way, you give a penalty the other way. You probably hear all the boos and you probably hear the cheers in the crowd more than you do in the field. It's not until, for example, I remember when I think Johnny May, he made a break down the sideline, I think in the 75th minute, and the roar of the crowd, like it transcended the level of noise that was already in the game, which was pretty loud, but it went to another level. And that's actually what got into my ear. That's what I heard. That was the first time I heard the crowd in the game. So it was in the 75th minute, and when it was super loud. So, and when you do have a crowd, it's more enjoyable, but it does focus you as a referee. Now, when I've done those games when there is no crowd, I think of the Lions series. I think of some early Super Rugby games I did when New Zealand was all locked down with COVID. I had to keep reminding myself, this isn't a practice match. This isn't a club game where nothing matters. This is the Springboks versus the Lions. We need as a team to get focused. We need to be ready for this game because it just felt so flat. It felt like there was no intensity. And when you don't have that, when you're building into a game and when you don't feel that in a game, you can get really complacent as a referee. So for me, I think 100% of every other referee who's been able to referee with no crowd, they would agree that it's actually better to referee with a crowd. And even for like subtle things, not that we ever listen, and I've sort of said we can't really hear the crowd, but when the try's been scored and there might have been a 50-50 forward pass, the crowd will erupt, like they will react. If there's a bit of foul play or a tackle, which might be high or not, but we're going to play on because live we think it's a play on. Because the crowd can trigger you and can trigger the ARs and can trigger the TMO on potential incidences, we actually do. What I didn't realize until I did games without crowds is that you use that quite a bit to get a feel for what you might need to check in the background or what you might need to rule. You don't let the crowd obviously tell you what to do because that's impossible, but it is just another tool that you use in the back of your mind, as well as obviously hearing, listening, using your teamwork, using the communication, using your eyes as a referee. But it's just a small element that I realized when we didn't have it. I thought, oh, that's a big space that we're missing in. So, yeah, mate, I think for the fact that I think you got to have crowds, like that's why we love rugby. But as a referee, it's tough when there's no crowd. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we're sort of back to the new norm of living with COVID and living with the next COVID and the next strain and whatever is around the corner, and we can just continue to have crowds in stadiums because it just makes for a much better spectacle, I think.
Oh, 100%. I think the first games back when like restrictions were lifted, obviously you're a bit skeptical because like you've been inside for 2 years almost. And when you go out and it's full, you kind of just stop thinking about it. It just comes back to normal. And like I got my ticket was still valid for the Lions Japan game before the tour.
Yeah.
And now Murrayfield holds just shy of 70,000. There was only 16,000 allowed. And like me and my dad were living at the same house, but he had to sit in one row and I had to sit in the row in front of him. And then like a seat next. It was so stupid. I'm like, this makes no sense. But
It's just not, that's not what rugby's about, unfortunately. You go, like, I remember rugby day is, you go to the pub, you have lunch with your friends, you have a few beers, and you go there, and you get stuck into the decision the ref make. You put your arm around your mate next to you, you yell at the opposition, you ride the waves of how your team's going, and you can't do that when your mate's five seats across the way from you. So yeah, like to endure that, I think it definitely made us realize how much we how lucky we are to be a part of the game.
oh, 100%. We've got another question from Ethan. He got two, but that's not the most amount. Any future goals for reffing?
Yeah, that's always one that I think most referees now, we try and set out short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals based around I saw the short and the medium term around, okay, in game, like how can I be better? We're always trying to improve, not just because the rules are always changing and because the game is getting coached, and they're always trying to find little gaps in the rules to be able to create advantages for their own team. But we're trying to always move ahead with that, because if I was the same referee that I was 10 years ago and hadn't learned and developed with the game, then I'd actually be quite a bad referee. I wouldn't have adapted to how the game's changed, because the game's changed a lot since then. It's even different from what it was like last year, and I'm sure next year it'll be different as well. So those short-term, medium-term goals around what I'm trying to achieve in the game, for example, trying to be more consistent with the head contact process, because that's a big thing right now. Trying to be more consistent with deliberate knock-ons. We saw in July that there were some penalties given and some yellow cards given where that interpretation's changed now. So that's actually going to have to make me change my decision making live. So we're actually having more, putting more benefit on, well, if they're going for a genuine attempt to catch the ball or a genuine attempt to control the ball, then we might just play on, or actually just call it a knock on versus yellow card. So that's something in sort of a short-term stuff around being more consistent as a goal for me. Certainly I've got 2 more games in NPC in New Zealand before my rugby championship game, which is Australia versus South Africa. So those focuses around being consistent around in-game neck rolls, latches, if I can just really sharpen up on those few things, then I'll actually be quite good for the rugby championship, and then be really good for November. So that's sort of like the short and medium term goals around the game. Longer term, I want to really be able to get a good sense of how to prepare well for a match. So I think I've got a really good preparation schedule of what I need to do during the week. And I include my assistant referees and my TMOs in that. But for me, I really want to explore how I can improve that, so that when we get to a game on a Saturday, we work really well as a team of 4 at the moment in terms of the communication, but we can always get to another level around that. So I want to work out as a goal, okay, what can I do during the week, whether it's give clips, whether it's do some deliberate practice with my team, whether it's having an extra meeting maybe on the Thursday night or the Friday night when we get in, to really get that teamwork going, so that we're working really well in that game. And then I guess like longer term for me, look, I'm 33 now. I've had the experience of 1 World Cup. I always like to keep improving and keep progressing. I want to referee playoff games at World Cups. I want to do finals of World Cups. And I say World Cups plural because, I'd hope that, I'd be able to get to at least next year in France, and then maybe 1 or 2 more after that, because the World Cup in Japan was amazing. It was incredible. And I think the World Cup next year in France, if I'm lucky enough to be selected, I think will be incredible as well, just because we'll offer such a different dynamic. So those types of experiences and, experiences with Lions Series, those pinnacle events, something that really drives me. And I think if I can keep improving, if I can control my progress and my development, then there should be no reason why I shouldn't be able to continue to keep going to those tournaments. But with refereeing, it's like most things in life. You never know. You can be really on fire one week, and then for some reason you just get one of those games where you're throwing a lot of curveballs, and we don't always get things right, and potentially you don't get a lot of them right, and sometimes that can really affect how many more games you do as a referee, unfortunately.
That's fair enough. And like you said, I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't be at France 23, and so, but I don't know the ins and outs of wrestling, so.
Oh mate, you can be the selector. It'll be fine. We'll chuck you.
I can only name four refs, so they can all go.
Nice. Now so there's probably 12 that are going to go to the next World Cup. I think that's sort of the number that they put in. We're really lucky. The group of referees at World Rugby level, both male and female, we've got some excellent female referees refereeing men's and women's games too. We've got a really good group of referees. I think we're really close-knit, we're really tight. There's not many referees that have any big egos. We're all there to actually, for the right reasons, for the game. We're all trying to improve. So, whilst I can probably name a few more than you, I think, we're going to have a good bunch of referees at the next World Cup. So that won't get announced until probably the start of next year. Right. So, yeah, hopefully some of those names will be on the same ticket as me.
Well, fingers crossed. You did mention the November test. What games are you officiating, or do you not know yet?
Which for Rugby Championship or
for the November tests?
Oh yeah, so for the test matches that we do in World Rugby, so there's 4 windows every year. So obviously there's 6 nations. There's the July window, Rugby Championship in November. For referees, what you only get picked for the next window based on how you performed in the previous window. So okay. You're refereeing 6 nations. So depending on how you referee in 6 nations, so you go through a thorough review where I'll review my game, my assistant referees will review the game. Then we have a manager or a performance reviewer who's a part of our selection committee from World Rugby. They'll also do a review, and hopefully that review marries up. That obviously we both watch the same game. When I review my game, I'll go through the decisions I got right, the decisions I got wrong, maybe some non-decisions, so some instances in the game that I should have penalised, which I didn't. And if they're actually within a range of what's acceptable, if you do okay in 6 nations, that's when you get appointed to July. And so we've just finished the July window, and it was only announced last week, based on how we all performed in July, who would get games in the Rugby Championship. So then in November, obviously I love November. I think it's one of the best windows because I love coming to Europe. I know it's the middle of winter, but it's just such a cool place to be able to sort of travel to a different country every weekend. We'll only find out about that after the end of the Rugby Championship. So depending on how I go for the 80 minutes in the Australia-South Africa game I have, will depend on what game I get, if I get one in November. So we all live by windows really. So we're all trying to, we can't really rest on our laurels that, that went all right because I've got another game in November. Nothing's guaranteed. But certainly if we do a good job, then, we should be able to referee in the next window, and then back to 6 nations, and then that cycle starts again. That's
fair enough. Is there any games that you are hoping for in the November tests to get?
Mate, I actually haven't looked. I kind of don't really try and get too far ahead of myself, because as I said, there's no point sort of looking at the November games because I've got one focus, and that's South Africa, Australia coming up in Sydney. But as I said, yes, 80 minutes is a big part of why I like to travel, but I also love traveling and catching up with friends and family. And I've got some friends in Ireland, obviously with the O'Keefe as the last name. So I've got some family up there. I've also got some friends and family in France. and I love coming to Edinburgh as well. So all around sort of the Europe, UK. I'd love to be everywhere, but I can only do 1 or 2 games. So yeah, mate, for me, is there any game that I really want up there? Look, I just want a game up there. I just want to be up there for November because it's just such a cool time, and there's some really, really good games on. Especially now we're getting to being a year out from the World Cup. We really start seeing teams strategize and sort of jostle their way to being the team that they're going to be at the World Cup. So that's going to be pretty exciting to be part of those games as well.
Yeah, no, spot on. And if you are in Edinburgh, give me a shout and we can go for a beer. Just saying.
100%.
We've actually got a question from Georgia now. It's Georgie Kazradze. He's asked, who is the smartest player?
That's a good one. Like, I immediately think that the majority of 9s and 10s are both the smartest in terms of intellect, but also in terms of what they say. So I can name a few, and I think it's just part of their job is, in that position, they've got to obviously know the law because it's an important part of how they play the game, but also they've got to try and put a bit of pressure on the referee. So there's quite a few international captains now, and I won't name them, who are first fives, who are pretty good at getting into the ear of the referee. But certainly, mate, like at that level, at tier 1 test level, the majority of those players know what they're doing. The majority of those players, they're at that level because they're some of the best athletes and best rugby players in the world. And you've got to be pretty smart to get to that level. So I think, a lot of the captains that I've had to deal with, the Alan Wynne-Joneses, the Sia Khaleesi's, the Guillaume Girardeau's when he was with France, either Richie McCaw for New Zealand, those guys, those men, when they were captains, obviously they were the smartest guys, I think, going on the field, because they obviously knew the law, and that's the first thing you got to know as a rugby player. And they also knew just how to, I don't know if manipulate's the right word, but also, just get beside the referee and just chat to the referee and make the referee feel good. And then, potentially it might sway a few decisions in the game. Not that I think a referee's ever changed their decision for a captain, but certainly there's some smarts around, I'm sure, how they deal with us subconsciously and how they deal with us in terms of just being human beings. So I would say, to answer that question from Georgia, is that anyone with a 9 and 10 on their back and anyone with a C armband on as their captain, they're the smartest guys for a reason. That's why they're in those positions in their teams.
Fair enough. I like how you said, like, sometimes how they could swear ref, but I mean, we've all seen the famous clip of you with Dan Cole's like, "Oh, we're just having a laugh, mate," and you're like, "No, not today." Yeah,
it's funny you bring that up. I came across that the other night and I watched it again. And I don't know sort of why I sort of came out with that response, because like my style as a referee, like I want to be really engaging and pretty open, and I always got a smile on my face. Man, in that moment he just got me. I was a little bit heated, but I quite like how in that heated moment I sort of just bit back and we had a bit of a smile. And then when he came back on, I said that we could have a bit of fun as well. When he finally settled down after 10 minutes. So I really like that. I think it's important for the game that, we're obviously there to lay down the law, but we can do it in a way which I think people can accept in a nice way. Obviously, we can step up that gear when we need to allow a bit more control if things are getting out of hand. So if there's a lot of push and shove, and I think if for example, Dane Coles is elbowing someone in the head on the ground, we'll step up a gear and put a bit more control, and that's maybe why I made a comment like that. But it's funny how that turned out. It's certainly something I haven't said before, and it's certainly something I didn't plan to say either. So just in the moment, sometimes they get under your skin, they get you. But I thought it was quite funny.
As I think it's just because you're laying down the law, you're like the penalty was going there, you did that, you're not allowed to do that, and then Dane Coles out and knows, "Oh, we're just having a laugh, mate." You're like, no, it's not happening.
No, not tonight.
Not tonight.
I don't know why I said that, but it's worked out all right.
Definitely, it's definitely popular on YouTube anyway. I'm going to just ask them all in in the same time, because I feel like you know this person. It's from Rico Santos.
Oh, yep.
So, what aspect or law gave you the most trouble to get right? Like, what took so long to get right?
Look, mate, I don't think I've got anything 100% right right now. You know, like as I sort of mentioned before, we have to keep developing because things keep changing. What I do like is I do feel pretty comfortable with my tackle decisions. I think the speed of the game, the tackle is something that the majority of test referees are really strong at. And I feel really confident in my ability to read a game, to read who's in control, who's in possession, the balance of strength, is the jackler dominant in a strong position lifting the ball versus off their feet, not supporting the body weight. So I quite like the tackle. I think and obviously it's an important part of the game. There's over 200 tackles in a match, so I've done a lot of training, a lot of practice, physically and mentally around that. So I thought, obviously that was hard at the start, like most parts of the law, but I feel like I've worked well at that and will continue working. But probably scrum's another one where you just have to build pictures in your mind. You have to see tight head versus loose head just over and over a game through clips and also just through games, so experience, to be able to get a real clear picture and simple picture around what you think is a penalty, and potentially that's the thing where it's good when coaches and referees can talk a little bit more in teams, because we're seeing an aspect which is almost 2D from the side, where what's happening inside the scrum is potentially a little bit different from what we're seeing. But teams have to understand that we're only refereeing based on what we see from the side of the scrum, and we've gotten to a point where and certainly I have, is we try and referee as simply as we can to make the decision really obvious on replay. So height, angle, bind. So that takes a long time to work out, and again, something I'm still looking to improve on. But I think probably the hardest, or the one that's most talked about at the moment, probably two that's most talked about. The one that's most competitive right now, the law that I need to keep working on, is maul defense. So we get a lot of line out to maul now. It's such an attacking weapon. Some people say that it's legalized obstruction and it's really, really hard to stop, but currently it's in the law that you're allowed to bind your own teammate and create this massive bodies that can move forward. So I think teams are really, really trying their hardest to try and defend it. Obviously protect the ball on attack, but also defend it as well as they can. So side entries become an issue, collapsing becomes an issue. Lifting the leg at the maul, something new that has been adapted into the game now, which we're trying to stamp out. So again, that's become hard because now they've added some new laws which we can't do, so we've got to add that into our process. But sorry, the hardest thing would just be the head contact process. So foul play. We saw a lot of talk, a lot of controversy potentially in the July window, with maybe some inconsistencies between us, or some areas where people either agreed or didn't agree with what the referees, what we were doing in the middle of the field. So for me, and I think for the whole group of referees, that's the biggest part of the game, the law that we're trying to develop, and we're trying to find that happy balance between player safety, but also allowing a spectacle, so that we're not dishing out red cards all over the place. So to answer Rico's question, it's probably well, it's a bit of everything, because we're always trying to continually improve, and things change. But I think certainly the big moments, which is foul play, are the hardest ones to get our heads around, because it's pretty complicated. Yeah.
It doesn't sound like the easiest job. I won't lie to you.
No, it's not easy, but it's the challenge which I think most of us who referee love. We love the challenge of going out there, having no clue what's going to happen in this 80 minutes in this test match, but then trusting your teammate on the sideline, your TMO, and then trusting the pre-work that you've done and sort of your experience. Just go out there and deliver something which allows the players to play the game. So that's always exciting, nerves and excitement. And once you're finished, and when there's not too much controversy, you can be pretty happy. Yeah,
I don't think you've done anything controversial, as far as I'm aware.
then you have not watched many of my games. There's always stuff controversial.
I mean, from like an international point of view, like if you're refereeing Scotland games, there's nothing too.
Yeah, I mean that's very kind of you. I think maybe like I guess like we're quite sensitive because we do go through quite detailed reviews. But like in test matches, look, the thing is that the longer you referee, and I've been doing this for 7, 8+ years now as a professional at tier 1 level, mate, the more things, obviously, the more people are going to disagree with you. So even if it's not a major issue that happened in the game, some people just not like your style. They just think that you have it out for certain teams or players. So the longer you do games, the more likely the team that they support is going to lose when you're in the middle. So that's another thing. But look, I think I'd be kidding myself if I said I hadn't had anything controversial happen in any of my games, because I certainly can remember a few. Even as soon as last year, I gave a red card against Marie Karabetti, which was pretty controversial. And that's just one of those things. Like what happens when you have something that's controversial? You got to actually look at, okay, was I right? Was I wrong? If I was right, okay, cool. But if I was wrong, well, we got to get better for the next window. So it's just that continued improvement, which we talked about.
That's fair. Were you right though?
No, I wasn't right for that one.
Oh.
So it really did, because that was actually before the Lion series. What it really did is it gave me a really quick wake up call around strengthening my head contact process and my foul play process. Right. So I was grateful it happened. And obviously the reason that it happened is because there was obviously a gap in my foul play process, which I needed to fill that gap. And unfortunately, it had to happen in that game. But if it didn't happen in that game, it would have happened in the next one. And the next one was a Lions series, or the next one was a November test match. So I was able to fill that gap pretty quickly, and it's meant that I haven't had the same thing happen again. And that's the goal as a referee, I think.
Oh, even better. And I like the fact that you've acknowledged the mistake, you've owned up to it, and you've improved from it. Yeah, who can complain at refs then? I don't get this. I don't get the slander. If they're sitting there admitting that they were wrong and they've improved the game so it doesn't happen again, shut up. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. No, I think it's just becoming a bit of a pastime now. If they've got to blame someone, they blame the ref. But it's just the unfortunate part of the game at the moment. Yeah, I don't think it'll change.
No, it won't change. I'm sitting here sticking up for refs, but I guarantee there will be a game this season I shout abuse at the ref. So
yeah, mate, there's been times when I feel sorry. Like I used to play indoor netball in New Zealand. It was like a Wednesday game that I play with the flatmates. I never told my New Zealand rugby bosses. I don't know if they'd be happy that I was playing indoor netball a few days before a game, but I really felt sorry for the umpires in that sport, because I feel like everything that was yelled at me in the weekend, I sort of bottled up, and then I just let loose on these umpires on a Wednesday night in a social game in netball. So I can understand why people do it, but certainly it'd be much better for us umpires and referees if they just trusted our decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's not you, don't panic. There is a referee that the whole week, as soon as it's either the home team or the away team, as soon as they go, oh, this guy's in charge, they go, both teams go, no. And it's the whole week that's like that. And I'm sitting like, how is he still a ref then? And that's not me being like brutal or that. It's just when there's 16 teams in the league and all supporters are like, no, not this one.
Yeah. Like my answer to that, and that's always interesting. I think, look, there's definitely times where I'm sure that when people see my name at Super Rugby or NPC, they'll be like, oh, here we go. It's Ben O'Keefe again. The referee that sort of ruins games. But I think the reason I'm still doing test matches is because I'm a really good referee. And I think the reason that this person that you're talking about is still refereeing at that level is because actually when it comes down to the reviews that go into the detail of the game and whether the person's right or wrong, the decision making, they're still refereeing because they're a really good referee. So it's quite easy, I think, for the public to be upset with the decision that went against their team, or be upset with what they thought was the law 10 years ago. But referees who are professional, referees who are non-professional, are always trying to, you know, be experts and improve at the game. So I think there just needs to be a little bit of trust that, well, they're being selected for a reason, and that reason's probably because they're actually pretty good at their job.
Fair. I'll give you the name when we're done recording. We'll
Right.
we'll keep it between us. Another question for Miko, just because there's two more. What match completely depleted your energy?
So a match that depleted my energy. I can definitely remember there was the recent Super Rugby final between the Crusaders and the Blues.
Yeah.
For some reason, and I had my GPS on as well, but you know, normally we run about 7 to 8 kilometers in a game as a referee.
Ooh.
It's pretty standard. So stop start, you know, over 80 minutes.
Yeah.
But I ran 10 kilometers in that game, and when I did the review, it wasn't because I was overrunning or being out of position, but that game was super quick. And I think that was part of the game plan for the Crusaders, that they wanted to spread the ball wide and actually move the larger Blues players around. So obviously I had to follow and chase the ball and, you know, be ball in line in a good position. So that was one that really, like, I was pretty knackered, and that's what I train for as a referee. You do a lot of physical work in the gym, on the field, because you need to be able to keep up with play, but you also need to be able to have a clear mind to make solid decisions in the first minute, but also in the 75th minute. That was one game where, you know, when we did have a stoppage for an injury, you know, I really took the water on board, which normally I'm very, very good in games and can sort of just cruise through. So it was that game. And then for different reasons, I think a few years ago I did a rugby championship game, which was South Africa versus Australia, and it was in Bloemfontein. So it was at altitude.
Yeah.
Can't remember off the top of my head how high Bloemfontein is, but it's up there. And it was about 30 degrees as well. And for the first 6 minutes, there wasn't one stoppage. And we finally had a stoppage for, I think, a TMO review. And man, I dragged it out because I could tell that the players were stuffed. Everyone was on their knees. I was on my knees. I was gassed. And I remember that was in the first 6 minutes. I thought, man, we've got a long 75 minutes to go. So that was sort of another game where I really felt it. But fortunately got my second wind and was all good for the rest of the game. But yeah, those two games really stand out for me. Generally being a referee, you know, because you don't have to be on side, you can sort of run some good cutting lines and, you know, get in front of the ball and get to the breakdown early, and you're not really too physically challenged.
No, that's fair. So hopefully you do not get a high tempo at high altitude game, because we can't have that.
Yeah, look, I think any referee would struggle with that. But the thing is, though, the players also struggle with that too. So the game does slow down because everyone finds that hard.
Fair enough. Last question from Rico, because he definitely jumped at the bit to get questions in for you. Do you think to pursue a career in golf?
Wow, it's interesting. There's a bit of money in golf now with the LIV league that's just started. I'd love to. Like, I think golfers around the world, if you don't know, sort of leading from that question, I do love my golf. I try and play around the day before or a few days before I referee wherever I am in the world. So I always take my clubs.
Nice.
It's part of my preparation. I guess I've made it. You know, I'm walking a course. So I'm walking 10 to 11 kilometers. So you're getting outside. It's a bit of physical activity. But for the mental side, I really find that it really helps my game, because I'll be walking the course with friends, with local referees I'll be playing with, or even by myself. And between shots, I'll be thinking about, okay, how am I going to set the scrums up tomorrow? If I have an active foul play, what's my foul play process tomorrow? And for example, if I hit a bad shot in golf, okay, just got to move on. Just like in a game of rugby, if I make a bad decision, just got to move on. So those guys that I think they can call golf their professional jobs, I think they live the dream. So I think the question being, would I like to pursue a professional career in golf? Of course I would, but would I be good enough? I think the answer to that is an easy no.
Nah, that's fair. We've got one more fan question, and I've got a few more, and then we're going to a different aspect of the show. We've been asked by David H. Patterson Have you got any advice for young refs?
Yeah, I think, mate, if I could ever do this again as a referee, the biggest piece of advice I would take is that you're gonna develop how fast or how slow you want as a referee. You've got your own personal skills that make you a unique and excellent referee, whether that be your communication, your physical ability, your ability to read a picture in front of you really quickly. So, it's important, I think. So two bits of suggestion. It's important not to try and be a Ben O'Keefe. It's important not to try and be a Nigel Owens, because actually you'll start limiting actually the unique skills that you have as a referee. What's important, I think, is actually looking at what you like that Ben O'Keefe does, and it might be his communication. Look at what like a Craig Joubert did, and it might be his running lines. You look at what and Alain Roland did, it might be his hand signals. So there are things that you pick up from all these international referees or even local referees, and then just add them to your game to actually make yourself better. And I think that's the way you learn. So you're not trying to copy someone else. You're actually just trying to take the best bit that they do and then making it part of your game as a referee, so that you can grow up and you can be an excellent referee with your own style. But you've got all these sort of abilities that you've learned and you've taken from other referees. So that's probably the main one of the main ones. And the second main one that I'd like to know is I would have done more of when I was coming through, is just absorbing as much advice as you can from rugby stakeholders. So whether you're doing a club game, it's talking to the coaches after the game, which might not be comfortable because the coach might have lost. But find out why they're grumpy. Find out why they're angry. Talking to the players after the game in the club rooms. Like what do they enjoy about the way that you referee? What do they not enjoy? And talking to other referees, like really challenge their thinking around law and your thinking around law, because if you do all those things, you find little nuggets in what people say. And 90% of what people say about how you referee, maybe you won't take it on board, but as long as you can sift through those facts, you'll grab those little nuggets of information, and then you'll think about it, and then you'll review it, and then you might add it into your game the next week. And if you can keep doing that week after week, whether you're doing under 15s, whether you're doing a club game, whether you're doing a social game, whether you're doing a test match, that's how you keep getting better every week. And if you want to do that as a career, if you want to be a professional referee, if you want to even just to do a premier club game or a top club game in your region, that continued improvement from a young age or from when you start refereeing, I think it's the only way to do it, because no one's born as a natural referee anymore, I don't believe, because I think the game's so complicated now that you actually have to do some learning. You got to do some deliberate practice to get better. So if you want to be able to do that, I think yes, you do a lot of work by yourself, but also the help that other people can do from the outside looking in around your games, I reckon that's invaluable as well.
That's fair, and I love how passionate you are about refereeing, which is always a good thing because it tells you that you care. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, mate. And look, I think it's that's what makes me nervous and excited before games, is because I care about making the right decision. I care about putting a good performance on the field as a referee for the players so that they can play the game. I'm not about going out there and showing off or being about myself. I actually care about making sure that the game is watched and making sure that the game is enjoyed by people around the world. We're competing with many other sports in the world for attention, for enjoyment, for obviously funding. And so we have a small we're part of that sort of wedge around being involved in the game. So I'm hugely passionate about it, and I think hugely I feel a big sense of responsibility around what we do as referees in the game right now.
Yeah, I generally can't complain with anything you said there. We're going to go for some, they're very easy questions, and then we're going to go into a different part of the show. Is there any comps that you've not refereed that you would absolutely love to do?
Oh yeah, man, it's a real easy question. I would love to referee in the European Championship. I think for me, I'm really jealous of And I know we've got our own competitions in New Zealand, which I think are fantastic. I think Super Rugby is one of the best comps in the world as well. But I think the European competition, when I see Barnesy, when I see Luke Pearce, Andrew Brace, all those guys refereeing in that comp, Matthew Raynell, I'm jealous because it just looks like an amazing atmosphere. You got nation versus nation at club level. It's something I haven't experienced before. So I think, those referees, when they get to do those games, they're experiencing something that I haven't, and potentially picking up on some benefits and some good skills that, I might not have yet because I haven't been able to do those games. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, potentially one day I'll be able to at least do a game or two just to experience that, because that would be unreal. I'd love to be part of that, because I think, and obviously I love to referee in all the other competitions around the world as well. I did a game before a Six Nations game. I did a game in the Pro 14, Edinburgh versus Scarlets. And mate, I just loved it for the difference that it allowed me to referee. It sort of opened up my awareness on what's important in the north. Obviously, we had to referee a lot more line out to maul, a lot more scrums from the 5 meters out. That teams' attitudes were different. So really, it was a really nice challenge that I had. So I think refereeing the top 14, refereeing the top league, refereeing the MLR. I'd love to referee in those competitions because I think they are potentially an opportunity for me, really, to get better.
But all valid answers, and it just gets to the point of your traveling as well. So because you like to travel around the world, so yeah,
traveling, and there'll be some good golf courses around there too. So
of course. Well, I mean, we've got the most famous golf course, so
yeah, and I've been able to get on there, and it was amazing actually watching the Open recently. Now, when I played there, they didn't have all the TV stands and all the crowd, but it was pretty cool watching some of the pros sort of walk around, the same sort of, well, they were on the fairways and I was in the rough, but sort of, walking the same areas that I was in.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been to St Andrews so many times. Obviously, I don't go in the golf zone just because it's a very small city, town.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's very touristy anyway. But when you put a golf tournament in, you're not getting moving. So I just don't go near it when the golf's on.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
And it's very different. Like you said, like if you take away the TV stands and the fan access and all that, it's almost secluded. Like when you take that all away, it's very strange to think this is like the epicenter of the sport.
Yeah, it is, mate. It's the epicenter. It's the holy grail of golf, I reckon.
Yeah, that's I would agree with that. Is there any players? I don't know if you're allowed to name them or not. Are there any players who are difficult to ref, and is there players that are just very easy to ref?
It's kind of. I think that is the same as what I answered before. Like if you got a 9 and a 10 on your back, you're generally pretty difficult to referee just because you're actually quite onto the game. And referees, we often make mistakes in the game, and they're the first ones to tell us. So I think if we went through a list of halfbacks around the world, I reckon 95% of them would be the ones that would be pretty difficult. But like I said before, that's their job. And I think if a halfback wasn't giving you grief, then I'd be like, okay, this is going to be an easy day. And actually, you're not doing half your job for your team. But also like at the level that I referee at, so it's professional. Guys are excellent. The players are excellent at just getting on with the game, understanding that the referee can make mistakes, understanding and trusting that the referee is making the right decisions. And they get on with it and they treat you with respect. Obviously you can contrast that with many other sports like football. So I'm very grateful that we have the type of player that we do have in the game right now.
I think the big difference, when I first started getting into rugby anyway, you blow a whistle, 3 come here and explain what went wrong. Football, they just blow, there's no talking. I'm like, no wonder they're getting angry. Like, tell me what I've done wrong. Don't just blow a whistle.
Yeah, it's I think like the snowball just started rolling too long ago, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and they can't go back. Now, you've got referees yelling back at football players, and it just increases it just heightens the tension around that whole environment. To a point now that the referees aren't mic'd up in a game, because I don't think we'd be allowed to be hearing the expletives that are just back and forth between the refs and the players, and that's just what they've accepted in that game. So fortunately, I don't think we got a culture in rugby that's we've got some good values, and I like how that comes across in the way that players and referees interact.
I think I've seen it on, I think there's maybe like a motivational post on Facebook or something, but it was like, football is a gentleman's game played by thugs, rugby is a thug's game played by gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen that before, and I'll give that a wee like. It's pretty true, I think.
Yeah. Last one before we get on to the other part. What is your dream match to officiate, and who is the dream ref team with you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a hard one. So my dream game to officiate would be it'd be Stade de France. It'd be the Rugby World Cup 2023. It'd be the final, and it would be France versus the All Blacks. Now, obviously, I can't referee that game, but that would be my dream. Obviously, I'd love to referee the host nation, especially in France, but also would love the All Black, because I'd love to referee the final, but I'd love for the All Blacks to be in the final. So actually, I prefer to be having a beer in the stadium watching them play in the finals.
That's the answer we're waiting for.
that would probably be my main goal. And then, so if I couldn't have my team with me on the field, so the four referees I'd want to have a beer with me in the stadium watching the game would be probably. Oh, there's quite. The thing is, I'd probably name all 12 of the. We've got such a good group. Yeah. I think Luke Pearce, Andrew Brace, Matthew Raynell, Matt Carley, Brendan Pickerel, James Dolman, Paul Williams. I think I've started to read Ben Whitehouse, and I know that I've probably forgotten a few, but mate, I just think we've got a great team of referees that I'd want any of them involved in any of my games, but also any of them involved with the good times afterwards.
No, that's fair. We're now going to go on to getting to know Ben O'Keefe, not the referee, just the guy, Ben O'Keefe. So, would you rather be too hot or too cold?
I hate being cold. It's one of the worst things. So, yeah, too hot.
Cats or dogs?
Definitely dogs.
I'm still waiting for them to say cats.
Yeah. No, mate, I grew up. I love cats. Grew up with a few cats, but I'm definitely a dog fan. They man's best friend, isn't it? So
exactly. Well said. Would you rather stay in or go out?
Definitely go out. I enjoy some good times with the mates.
Good. What's your favourite drink then? We should go to a drink.
So I really like a Guinness when I'm overseas, especially when I'm up in the UK. Enjoy red wine when I'm in South Africa, in Argentina, but definitely I love a little whiskey at the end of the night as well. So man of many tastes. So
good answer though. Maybe not the wine thing. I'm not a wine drinker, but the rest you said was fine.
More for me then. That's all good.
So, what's your go-to meal? You can have anything in the world.
Probably lasagna. Massive fan of lasagna. Mum makes a pretty good one that I grew up with. So I'd smash that with a bit of barbecue sauce anytime.
I don't know what to think about the barbecue sauce with lasagna, but
it's pretty controversial. It's pretty controversial, but just being honest.
Oh, that's good. I like the honesty. And I kind of keep the questions the same, but you always get different answers, so I like it. And you get to know more about the person than you do about their job. So Yeah, I'm keeping them. Favorite dessert?
I'm not massive on desserts actually. Like
Oh no.
this is all, yeah. Like we'd go out for a meal, and I don't really order it, but if I had to, it'd just be like a chocolate brownie or a chocolate cake or something.
That's fair.
Yeah, generally I sort of order too much in the entree and the main, and then I'm too full, which is surprising because I've got a massive sweet tooth. So I love a sweet and I love a little chocolate bar, but yeah, for some reason desserts, maybe it's just that time of night, not my thing.
Two very different things though.
What's that?
I have like having a sweet tooth and eating like snacks and all that, and then having an actual dessert. It's two very different. Two very different
Yeah,
things.
I'm not saying that either just because I think my trainer might be listening to this, but no, it's a genuine dislike for the desserts actually.
That's fair. No, you should hear some of the questions we get answered, and some of the answers we get back is brilliant, and it's real. That's the thing I like. Dream holiday. Like, where's your dream holiday destination?
My dream holiday would probably it'd be somewhere where obviously I go a lot of places for rugby, so it's somewhere where there's no rugby. So I think like Indonesia, like or Bali, even like Scandinavia, where I haven't been before. Like I think those places would be pretty cool. But generally, we traveled for 200 days of the year.
Yeah.
By the time we get our holiday in December, people ask me, well, where are you going to travel to? I'm like, mate, I've traveled the whole year. I just want to be at home. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I like to get to some of those other countries that I haven't actually been to yet because they don't really have a lot of rugby at the moment.
So basically, no rugby post should be seen on Ben's holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just no rugby at all.
One thing you have to do, but you hate doing it.
What's one thing? Oh, see, I don't know. I guess it's just probably training, isn't it?
Yeah,
so we and probably around the training, it's probably just healthy eating, really. Like I actually don't mind training. I don't mind going to the gym and running, but we get some nutritional advice, and I think that's the main thing for me. Like we've got to get our skin folds down when we're training. Every year we have about 3 different windows where we test. One of them skin folds, and generally I'm up there in terms of the group. I want to say it's because of age, but a lot of the other referees are in pretty good nick, and I think for me it's mainly because of my diet. So that's one thing I need to get better at, is just eating better. So there's one thing that I hate doing is eating healthier than I should be.
That's a common theme I've noticed though, that no one likes eating healthy.
Too hard. It's too hard.
It's too expensive. I've noticed that. It's cheaper to get a chocolate cake than it is something healthy. That was a bad example, but I don't know.
No, that's a fine example. I think that's my reason as well. I'm going to use that.
There you go. It's a money saver.
Yeah.
Biggest pet peeve?
I think just like leaving your dishes out.
Yeah, that's a fair one. Yeah.
So put them in the dishwasher, tidy the bench. That'll be it.
That's fair.
Not
Cardio.
It's not a biggie, but yeah.
That's fine. That's a good one. Cardio or strength and conditioning?
Definitely cardio.
No.
Actually, I don't mind a little running session, a little Bronco session, or a bit of interval training. So I'm a big fan of that rather than just standing in front of the mirror working on the guns. There's a few referees that do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm more of a get on the field, on the pitch.
I'd rather be on the field, and be like productive, but not a Bronco. No, absolutely not. Not a Bronco. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Yep, don't mind it.
No.
Don't mind it at all. Don't mind it at all.
Oh,
I actually had this conversation. I was in Argentina with Matthew Raynell, and we had this conversation learning different Spanish words, and it came up, and he was a fan of it as well. So, mate, I'm all for different tastes, and I think you shouldn't knock something because it works.
there is something I've been told to try, but I'll run it by you anyway. Pineapple on a burger.
Yeah, again, like nothing wrong with it. Mate, chuck a pineapple ring with a fried egg and a beef patty and a bit of cheese. It's all good.
I don't do
Barbecue
egg.
sauce
This energy's took a massive dip. He likes doing Broncos and he eats pineapple on pizza.
again. Yeah, this guy's crazy.
No, it's all good. Six Nations or Rugby Championship?
Six Nations.
Really?
Sorry to my Sanzar counterparts, but there's something about Six Nations that's pretty special. Nothing like a full stadium at Murrayfield with half are away supporters, half are home supporters. You got the piper on the roof. You got the sort of a mist, that fog that settles over Murrayfield that time of the year. I think Six Nations is great. I love it.
That's fair. Actually, this is just an extra side bit now that you've mentioned it. Do you get goosebumps when the pipes stop and it's just the crowd that sings?
Mate, every single time.
Yeah.
It's up there with my favourite anthems, probably the Scottish anthem and the South African anthem. I think for me are the ones that give me the most goosebumps. I remember my first Tier 1 Test match that I did was Scotland versus Argentina many years ago at Murrayfield, and I promise you, that week I had to go on YouTube and listen to different live versions of the Scottish national anthem at Murrayfield just to try and like desensitize myself to what it was then going to be like on Saturday, because it just gets me going. I love it. I found on the Saturday when I then refereed the game, it was still hard not to get pretty I wouldn't say emotional, but just like, wow, like it's so special. So those types of atmosphere things for me, because they're right before you switch on to referee, they're pretty enjoyable.
I mean, I will, because I'm at like every Scotland game. I'm very lucky for that, but I will always call it the forever goosebumps. Like it's now like my 11th season, like going to every game at Murrayfield, and as soon as it's about to hit, and when it does, you're just sitting there like, shit, like holy crap! Like, there's no words.
In Argentina, they obviously the pipe has continued. It was the first time I've heard the anthem in its entirety with the pipers the whole time, and I was sort of waiting for it to stop, and I was like, oh, man, it is really good when the crowd just continues and sings it at Murrayfield.
Murrayfield exclusive, that is.
yeah, that's cool.
I have noticed that. I've done the odd away game, and they just keep playing it. I'm like, no, that's not right. Stop. Let us sing it. Let us take over. Yeah. Who's winning the NPC?
Mate, I don't know. Like, because it's such a I don't know. It's such a pool of new players involved that. I mean, I think Tasman are normally pretty good. Canterbury are normally pretty good. Auckland are very good. Hawke's Bay have had the Ramfleet Shield for the last 2 seasons. So, and I think if I'm right, and I might not be, but I think it's one whole pool now. So the winner is the winner rather than different. I might be wrong, so I need to check. I've got a preseason game tomorrow, so I need to check up on that. So. Mate, look, so I've mentioned a few teams there, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was another team that came through and took it as well. That's sort of the beauty of that competition.
That's fair. I thought you were going to go like proper, like biased and go for your closest one from where you're from.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I grew up in Tasman. I went to university in Dunedin, Otago. I lived in Auckland, and I now live in Wellington. What I can say is that Horowhenua Kapiti will win the Heartland Rugby Championship. That's my region where I live now. So
okay, fair enough.
That's what I'll put my money on, even though I'm not allowed to put money on rugby. That's what I'll say.
I'll put my money on it on behalf of you, and we'll split the shares. There you go.
Yeah, don't, because I don't know if I'm right.
I'm only joking. I wouldn't get you in trouble. Last question. Wayne Barnes or Nick Berry?
For what?
Just who do you prefer? Drinking, refereeing, all of it.
I can't pick between them because they're both just epic. They're just both epic lads, both of them. Mate, I've had some great times on field, off field with Barnesy, and the same thing with Bez. He spent a lot of time with Nick down here in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia and in New Zealand. He was with me in the Super Rugby final as well. So, mate, I can't pick between them. They're all on par. And I've said that the whole night, all those guys, we're just on par.
It's just a fun little one. I usually do it. So if players have played for multiple teams, this city or that city, or if you're really close with if there's like a clique of players, is it that player or this player? Just stuff to catch them off guard, just a little.
Yeah, mate. Like you nearly got me. I couldn't. It's just because they were so even. I couldn't pick.
Sometimes if you say it quick enough, they just say it, and then they don't think, and it's brilliant because you're just, okay. I'll let the other one know that.
Yeah.
But no, you've absolutely smashed this, and massive thank you to everyone that wanted to ask you a question. Made my job a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm glad you got some questions, and hopefully, whether it was questions to get some learning or questions just to know something new. Hopefully, everyone's learned something.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And obviously, thank you to yourself, Ben, for agreeing to come on and chat with us.
Absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it. This was fun.
History maker, first referee for Rugby Connection.
Yeah. No pressure to the next one. Well, the good thing is that I had first go at answering the question, so if they just say anything more to me, then I'll just be branded for just copying, won't they?
Yeah, I've no interviews ever the same. I always change up the questions. So yeah, but thank you so much. This has been the final whistle with Ben O'Keefe, and we will see you next time.